But since PulseChain is the last one to be launched during that time, it puts us in a really, really, really kind of good position. Basically, that positions this. So if PulseChain is the last one to come out, and then we're essentially pumping during the thing, I think that a lot of the L1s will be fully pumped out, and then we're going to have like a god tier pump during like the first half of the bear market. So during that first half of the bear market, you're going to have a lot of influencers and people just very hesitant about the PulseChain and stuff like that. And then eventually it's going to be its last game in town, and then people are going to capitulate and come into the ecosystem. And it's, this is when we're actually going to get sort of the first time that, I mean, the really, really, really first time where we have most crypto people saying like, yeah, they're going to start talking about, the Hex coin is really like, it's a great counterintuitive coin, because people always want to, like, a lot of especially traders and stuff, whether it's good or not, they always want to find they always like to find an asset that would, if BTC dumps, if the market's dumping, what's an asset that holds its value and then kind of goes up? Hex is one of those things typically, right? Outside of once it hits an all-time high, of course, it does like an 80% correction, which is normal. But during these turbulent times, right? I mean, there was really only a couple tokens other than like stable coins where like the price of BTC shot down and Hex held its own roughly once it's done that 80% correction. So, my God. So during that capitulation phase, we are going to get in a lot of like of people just saying like they're going to come into the PulseChain ecosystem, and it's going to be PulseChain season, and you're going to see kind of crazy prices where what I'm predicting is basically 3/4 of the bear market, or like once we trough down, we hit the all-time low, and then we hit the first quarter of finally entering to the new cycle. So once we hit the bottoms of BTC and Ethereum from that bear cycle, and we start pumping, just like when we hit $3,000 on BTC, and then we're in that zone of like $6,000 to $9,000 Bitcoin price. So just to give you guys kind of context of what I'm talking about, like a March of 2019 to about a March of 2020 sort of range right there, is like we're still like the only thing doing decent that's done decent the whole bear market. And that's going to give a lot. I think it's going to be one of the first sort of like credibility. Like we've already earned that credibility, but it's going to be the sort where the whole market, you can't ignore that anymore, to the point where like it's going to be pretty common knowledge that like, PulseChain killed it. The Hex ecosystem did very, very well. And it's like you have to, even if they don't like it, they're like, well, yeah, it did. It's sort of like how begrudgingly a lot of people were like, yeah, I got to chalk it up to BNB token. It killed it. It's true. And that's what I truly believe is going to happen. And then it's pretty choice time where Richard's kind of launching the PulseChain ecosystem right now, because you have this whole thing where one of the reasons I've been saying that it's kind of like, May, June, basically, I'm kind of like, he needs to, like, if I was him, right? If I was him, I would be trying to launch the PulseChain ecosystem a little tiny bit before the merge happens with Ethereum. So you're able to kind of launch, holy crap. And then when there's a fun, because like, obviously you're going to have the initial like, boom, like this pump. And then once that pump sort of subsides a little bit, because it always does, right? Boom, boom, it calms down a little bit. Then you have these Ethereum gas fees, and now you have a marching drum. Boom, 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 boom. You see, this is why Ethereum shit. This is why Ethereum shit. This is why Ethereum shit. Look at these fees. These fees are horrible. Bam, 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 bam. And then this drives more people towards the PulseChain ecosystem. You do need these narrative pushes and stuff. And this is like one thing that I was saying early on with Hex, is that once we finish like the AA, I love Hex, but it's immutable, everything's done, but we were having no news cycle on Hex. And now we've essentially built an entire ecosystem that so Hex and PulseChain and Hex and PHEX are done, finished products, done. But now we have a sort of an entire ecosystem building around these immutable sort of systems that we can just build and branch off, and there's always a news cycle. So people who are rich in the PulseChain, PHEX, PEX, are always going to bring money back to the motherland, which is Hex and PHEX, basically. And now in terms of like kind of the war between the two, obviously I do believe that sort of EHEX is going to eke out more. It's going to be a higher price per token, but eventually that gap will sort of kind of center off depending on how terrible Ethereum's out. So if Ethereum, because what's going to happen towards like more of the medium term is Ethereum gas fees are going to go back down, but it's because of like the consistent like staking and unstaking and being able to earn yield and people moving money around a lot more often, as well as like more players getting to the Ethereum space. The Ethereum gas fees are going to step up So we're on this kind of retrieve where we've kind of had this corrective sort of bull cycle right now, right? We've had like way as low as like 18, 19, 30 and stuff. So our average is going to be something close to about 60 Gwei during lulls. 60%. So 60 Gwei. So that being kind of the lowish, maybe we catch 58. So that should let you know that emergency to end stake any stakes and stuff, especially if you had 3-4 year stakes and stuff, it is a quite significant amount of money. We're talking about $500, maybe $800 to unstake something. That's pretty expensive. So this could cause a lot of people who have smaller stakes, they can't unstake it, and then this could really drive more and more people towards the PHEX side. Obviously, a lot of people are going to take advantage of both, but eventually, like the Ethereum gas fees could get so terrible, and then as well as the way like the calculations are done for the end stakes on Hex, because the longer the stake, the more computation is done, the more the gas fee keeps shooting up. That, and especially if the Ethereum price keeps shooting up. Let's just say we get something like, I mean, I'm fully still convinced we're going to hit something like an eight to a $16,000 Ethereum price. So what happens if it's 0.45 of an Ethereum to end stake something, and Ethereum's fucking like $15,000, so it costs $7,000, and Ethereum's, and like Hex's price is like just it hasn't pumped, or I mean has pumped but it's down 80%, and then that stake's unprofitable shit. So you're gonna see a big shift towards, that's when I think the PHEX side can really shoot up. But there's gonna be this kind of middle ground where I think like during like the I would say this entire year, basically maybe up until like maybe the end of this year, where EHEX is going to be a higher price than PHEX. And that ratio could be as bad as maybe like a 10-1, something like that, because you're just going to have some people stupidly selling all their PHEX. So you're going to have a lot of glut of PHEX on the market at some point, right, within the first 2 to 3 months. And this is a huge buying opportunity. So yeah, man, shout out to Brissology, baby. Shit, one of the OGs right here. Was it at the first ever Hex meetup ever with